Hey guys, Montel here, and welcome back to Free Thinking with Montel, where we dive into compelling stories and ideas that inspire us to view the world from different angles. And of course, I'm your host, Montel Williams. In today's episode, we're tackling a sensitive yet crucial topic: accidental shootings and their role in the wider conversation about gun violence, gun ownership, and also community safety. This episode is part of our special book club series, which features impactful narratives designed to spark meaningful discussions. To highlight the importance of this conversation, consider this. Between 2015 and 2021, 3,498 Americans lost their lives due to unintentional gun injuries, including 713 children, as reported by the NIH. With approximately 30 million children living in homes with firearms, many of which are unlocked and are loaded, this issue demands our immediate attention. Now, what's been crazy about this is that when you look back, we don't discuss this as much as we should, especially right now, let's say during a presidential election. I haven't heard as many discussions that should be held on this topic. Well, joining me today is a remarkable guest who has a personal insight into the topic. His name is Mr. Paul Rousseau. Not only did he survive such a harrowing experience, but also authored an incredible memoir, a very powerful memoir reflecting on it. Paul, thank you so much for being a part of the show today and sharing your story with us. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, for real. Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Look, your book, Friendly Fire, is an eye-opener. You were accidentally shot by your best friend in college just days before graduation. Can you tell us a little bit about that day and what led up to that moment?
Yeah, it was a Friday night. It was like any other Friday night. We were, he's my best friend. We're getting ready to go out. I'm feeling a little under the weather, but, I'm willing to go out, for a deep fried pickle. But we'll see what happens. But sure enough, he goes in his room and I thought he was getting ready. And it turns out he was, in fact, messing around with a gun, a loaded gun that, of course, I don't think he knew was loaded. But, I'm sure we'll get to all that. And he pulled the trigger. And so I was in the living room, leaning over at the time, and the bullet ripped through two walls. And I was leaning over in such a way where the bullet then hit my skull and should have went completely through my head. But by some means, it bounced off and fractured my skull bone, and the bullet was literally on the carpet, like crinkled up.
I have a feeling that those two walls and whatever it passed through slowed it down just that much. So, but for the it didn't kill you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I got extraordinarily lucky, in some regards, of course. But and then from there, it's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because you remained conscious through the entire time.
That's right.
And that must have been absolutely terrifying. Can you describe some of the moments immediately following the shooting and what was going through your mind in those critical seconds?
Yes, absolutely. So it knocked me over, and I fell back into two wooden dining room chairs. So I had the impact going forward, and then I hit my head falling backward as well.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
Where did it hit you? Side, back? Where did it hit you?
I was leaning over. If this is the top of my head, I was leaning like this. So left prefrontal cortex, right here.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so my first thought was, there's been an earthquake in Minnesota or a nuclear war. Because why else? How else was I on the ground all of a sudden? I had no clue. And then sure enough, my best friend and roommate, as you mentioned, he comes out and he's loosely holding a pistol in his hand. And I'm like, oh, I think I just got shot in the head. And I tried to stand and everything was just silly putty, wobbly. And my first thought was just, I have to see it. I have to look into a mirror. And so I made my way to the bathroom just to see it. And, each like wall was a checkpoint. And here I am leaving these bloody handprints everywhere throughout the whole apartment. And I looked.
Go ahead. What did he say? He was holding the gun, but did he come in and go, oh my God, I'm sorry. Let's call 911.
Well, the 911 thing didn't happen. That took some convincing, and I can only speculate, but, we were 22, I don't know how equipped we were to really handle that sort of situation, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, but yes, a best friend, you would think, would not think of his future ahead of mine, but he did. He's like, I don't want to be scrubbing toilets for the rest of my life.
Did he say that? I mean, did he?
He did say that later on in the day. So this, again, we'll get into this, but it took 2 hours for me to get help.
What?
Yes. So he actually needed convincing. I had another roommate, so he calls that roommate, and that roommate comes home from volleyball practice with his girlfriend, and together we spent time trying to convince him, we have to call somebody. He's really in trouble, and yeah, it was.
Wait, did he stop you from using the phone?
No, I was in such a state of shock and disbelief. I mean, so I look in this mirror and I'm looking for a hole right here, right in the middle of my forehead. Am I done? Is this game over? Is it just going to be minutes or seconds until this is the end of my life? That was my first thought, and I had long hair, so I parted it and there was nothing there. I'm like, okay, all right, that's step one. And then the second thing was I found the wound, and I moved some things around, and I was just kind of rotating my head as if you would rotate like a trading card, like a holographic trading card. I'm just looking for a bullet, like, is this thing still lodged in my head somewhere? And it took time to realize that it actually had come out on its own.
It did not penetrate your skull. It reflected off your skull.
What it did is it bounced. Sorry, I should say it fractured my skull like this, like a break, and it sent shards of bone into my brain, and it broke my the whole prefrontal cortex area of my bone inward, and then ricocheted off. So it was not a graze, as some of the initial reports had come out from the media. They mentioned graze, and they mentioned, but he also required a craniotomy. That's weird. That sounds a bit more serious than a graze. So,
Yeah, no shit. I mean, but I mean, now, do you remember a lot of the conversation that was taking place in that 2 hour period of time?
I do, and I think it's because I started writing this book about a week or two after all this happened. Maybe 2 weeks is probably the safe bet. And so that process of writing about it right away, I think, solidified a lot of the memories. So I do actually remember a couple conversations we had where my best friend who shot me wanted to go to Home Depot to get quick dry plaster and paint to cover up the walls, cover up the holes. Yeah, that was his thought before we should maybe call the cops and get you fixed up. So I remember that we were all standing around the kitchen island, just,
You're still standing.
Yes, at this point I had worked up the strength to stand, and I could speak in gibberish, and because I was able to speak, I just kept doing it because I just was like, I need to make sure I can stay conscious and stay through this, stay alive mostly too.
So who eventually called the emergency services? Did an ambulance come?
So before that, there is one thing I should mention. Public safety did come to the room on their own accord because the wall that was shot through had the fire alarm on it. And I think there was a tamper mechanism. And so the fire alarm was blaring throughout all of this. So I'm like looking at myself in the mirror, and there's this, wailing alarm. They come to check on why that happened. And so he puts me in my room and with some gauze. Well, first he tells me to shower. So I shower, and then he puts me in my room. Yeah, I know.
Oh.
So I'm laying down, and there's these photos from the cops where just blood is pooled on this pillow that I'm laying on. But anyway, he shuts the door. Public safety comes. They knock, and they ask him a series of questions. Why is the fire alarm going off? Oh, I burnt a pizza. Why is there blood on the floor? Why is there blood on the walls? My roommate had a bad nosebleed earlier. Why does it kind of smell like smoke? Oh, again, we just burnt some food. Why is there a gun holster on that sofa? Oh, the gun's not on campus. And she goes, okay, and leaves. So that was
kidding me, man.
So
Well,
that was
first
that.
off, and I'm so sorry because this is a terrible.
No, it's
I'm, I'm
interesting. I get it.
reacting. I'm reacting to you telling me this live.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
forgive me if I sound like a jerk.
You're
But
not. No, don't worry about it.
fuck that asshole. Excuse me. It's your friend, but still, I mean, really, I mean,
Yeah.
were you not? Your brain wasn't going. Are you kidding me? How
Yeah, so
long have you
not
been
until way
together?
after. Yeah, yeah, right. Not until way after the fact. So in the
Huh?
moment, I was very passive because I just had, it's like, what happened. I know what happened, but in the moment, I'm like, I could not conceive of what had happened. In fact, I had a haircut planned for the next day. And while I'm in the shower watching like these bits of hair and blood go down the drain, I'm like, oh, she'll just have to like somehow cut around this like hole in my head. Like nothing was going through to me even at the time.
Wow. So okay. So they leave. Does he come back in immediately to check on you?
So this is where things get a little fuzzy. I don't think he came in at that point. I think that's the public safety officer left. And I think that's when my other roommate and his girlfriend entered the apartment. And then they were getting caught up. And then I heard them come in and sort of, oh, what the heck's going on? And kind of, again, put my arm on a desk, put my arm on the wall, just trying to checkpoint, work my way to the kitchen where we all were. And from then on, that's kind of when that Home Depot conversation went, oh, we'll just fix the walls, we'll just clean it up, and then we'll be on our merry way.
And he's now, I mean, is he showing any concern for you? Does he think that you were injured badly? Did he think you just grazed? I mean, did
I
he? I'm sure you had conversations with him after, but I mean, did he express any like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, my friend, Holy Lord, let's see what
so
we can do."
in the moment, he was very apologetic. I don't think either of us knew how serious it was. Um, I mean, it was like the length of a quarter, like the coin. That's how deep this gash was. And you could see bone, you could see it all. There's some very terrifying photos, and that I've now seen. But I just don't think at least didn't express to me that he understood the severity of it ever.
And at the time, that moment, you didn't even understand the severity of it.
Yeah, so it wasn't until I, of course, eventually went to the hospital that we can discuss that at some
Did
point.
you drive yourself to the hospital? Somebody drive you to the hospital?
So yeah, so then we finally convince him. My other roommate and his girlfriend, they say, we're going to call if you don't. They gave him the ultimatum. And I think he could just feel the weight of everything building up. So then he ended up calling the cops. And the cops came into the room at about the 2-hour mark since the shooting happened. And then so I was taken out on a gurney to an emergency transport vehicle to the hospital.
And when you got there, now again, one of the amazing things, and I think you were right in your own hazed thought process
Yeah.
of staying awake and staying lucid. So
Yeah.
you were able to explain to them how you were feeling. But when you got to the hospital, I mean, just describe that when you get to the hospital. I'm sure that the emergency room staff was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Her, huh?
No, for real. They're like,
You're my language. I'm sorry.
no.
You got me.
That means a lot. No, I have a bit of a potty mouth myself. I'm holding back, actually. No, I'm just kidding.
Crazy. I mean, I'm like, I read your story.
Yeah.
And thought, yeah, I can hang with this. However, as I listen to you speak, oh man, empathy. I can't help it.
It's a very sensational thing, and I mean that as in it riles up sensation. It's a very visceral story. So I had a conversation with the paramedics. We were trying to figure out the trajectory of the bullet and if it might be still lodged in the back of my head.
Right. They had not found it yet on the floor.
Correct. The cops had not photographed it yet. And eventually, so they found out that my best friend actually threw it in a garbage can. And so
what?
I tell you what, if you pick apart this, it gets weirder and weirder as you go on.
Well, let's see. Let's stop for a half a second.
Okay.
Because let me see if I can get to something that we just kind of tell me about yourself before that incident happened.
Sure.
let's talk about that relationship between this friend of yours. You guys hung out all the
Sure.
time. You were bros. You know what I mean? You did things
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
thick and thin, ups and downs along the way, but you still hung tough, right?
I'd say that's accurate. It's like anything when you live with someone. So this was senior year of college, and I had known him since freshman year of college. Our dorms were mirrored across the hall from each other, and they always tell you in college, just leave your doors open. Why bother shutting your door? And so I'd look to my left, and it's like a mirrored extension of my own room. And we'll call him Mark. That's not his real name.
Right.
We'll call him Mark.
Yeah.
So there's Mark, over there, he's also doing his first homework in freshman year, and we're exchanging glances. We're both nervous for our tests, whatever, what have you. And then, he comes in, and then we start hanging out. He puts his phone number in my phone, and we go to lunch and what have you, And so we just become friends, and he has some credits, and he's able to get this on-campus apartment that was reserved for upperclassmen the following year. So then we recruit the roommate that I had mentioned. So now it's the three of us, and so on. We lived together for 4 years. Yeah.
And I understand this dynamic because I went to I didn't go to a place where I was in an apartment. I went to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I had the same roommates I was very fortunate. One of the only people that literally had the same roommate for 4 years. So
Right.
I do understand it. I mean, that's one of the thick and thin things over 4 years, man. I mean, you agonize together. You're feeling trepidations about tests coming up and girls and
yeah.
But this is like your homie.
Yeah, and this is very formative years, like you mentioned. You're essentially becoming the man you will be for the rest of your life. You're going there to start a career and start your life, and these are the friends you're supposed to have forever.
Absolutely. Tell me about you. And who you were, Paul. I mean, I'm only asking this because I'm going to ask you later about how you changed and what has changed about you. Because I'm sure that even though you were able to, you had to do a whole cranial thing for you. So, I'm sure you had to go through physical therapy. It took you a long time to regain the faculties. I look at you right now. I would never know that you had suffered a traumatic brain injury, but you suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
Severe.
So let's talk about you for a second. Who was the Paul before this shooting?
Well, I grew up in Minnesota, obviously northern suburb. As a kid, as most kids, I wanted to either be a professional basketball player or a professional musician. They told me that if I wanted to be a professional basketball player, I'd have to be scoring about 40 points a game. I was scoring 4 points a game, so that got pushed to the side. Music became my life. I practiced the guitar religiously with great rigor, and that was my goal. I wanted to go to music school, and I got accepted into music school. And in fact, my mom, though, with all the right intentions, just said, "Hey, music might not be a thing to really sustain you on. That can be a cool thing you do." So then she's like, "Okay, how about you become an orthodontist?" And I said, "I don't really want to do that. So let's meet in the middle somewhere." And writing had always been sort of a thing I had done in high school. I had written just about every day, creative work and what have you. And so I said, "Okay, how about let's do this? I can be either a professor, I can go into marketing, I can be a copywriter, something like that." She's like, "Yes, that's totally cool." So I went to the private university that I met Mark at, with the intention to, be an English major with a writing emphasis, and then to eventually get an MFA to become a professor or anything like that, and just write novels.
Sure. And talk a little bit about your personality, and because I don't know, so you're going to tell me in a little bit whether or not you think your personality has changed. But who was Paul? Were you like this happy guy? You were always, on a high, or where were you?
For sure. I was known to be very funny, I guess you could say. Happy for sure. My mom used to say that I had this like jovial quality, and in my book I reference it as like my twinkle, I call it, because she'd always say, "Oh, you lost your twinkle," which I know is what you're getting at here.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you had this inherent quality to just be happy, be optimistic, be very patient. And then, she had a talk with me about a year or so after the brain injury, and it was sort of a confrontation thing. She said, you lost all these qualities that you used to have. This long fuse you used to have is now a very short fuse. Little things irk you. You're very serious now. And I of course was diagnosed with PTSD, very major depressive disorder, anxiety, all those things. So
tell me about, okay, so I wanted to know that before we talk about more about the incident. So you go in the emergency room and they realize that this wound is much more, egregious than they thought it was. And so they start looking and they start finding you have little bone shards in your frontal lobe, side lobe.
Yes, correct. Yep, left prefrontal cortex, they called it.
And I do know I'm not a doctor, but anyway, I'm just remembering things that I've heard about through other interviews that I've done with people who have damage to their frontal cortex.
Yes.
And there are some lot of things that kind of come along with that.
Yeah. Right? So yes, absolutely. What was described to me was the part that has the scar tissue, because, like I said, I did have a craniotomy. They took the fractures out. They put a titanium plate in. They put some titanium screws in, and so I have like this rebuilt area of my head. So the scar tissue is on the part of the brain that deals with abstract thought, with planning, and a lot of like speech things, to my knowledge. That's what I think I've been told.
There's, I met a person, I did an interview with a model. I'll never forget the interview with a model, a British model who had been in a car accident and injured that area of her brain. Yeah. And she was saying that it's almost like there's sometimes that, without her, she doesn't even know it, but she's kind of lost some of that filter. So, like, do you find yourself like just, like, oh, you're ugly? I mean, no, I don't mean it, but you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes, there's that part of your brain is also responsible for kind of keeping us in check and leaving all the thoughts inside rather than letting them out. So you kind of let them out all the time?
Yeah, I'm sure if you ask my family, they would say I'm more blunt. That's the way they would probably put it. Right. And it's not so much the like the you're ugly stuff, which is I'm sure really happens, and it's that's an issue, of course. Mine is more like I just want to get to the meat of something quicker. I'm like, okay, let's get things going here, and of course, I've just
jump to the chase.
Yeah, exactly. Like don't just dilly dally so much here, and exactly.
Got it. So that clearly you're in you're rolling the emergency room and you see, oh my God, and you're laying there. What are you thinking to yourself? What are you thinking? You're not going to make it? Do you think you were going to make it? What?
I did at that time still not know if I was going to make it. Yep. So they had cops come in. Well, first I should mention they had a horde of people just like cut all my clothes off. They gave me iodine. They sent me to a CAT scan just to make sure I wasn't shot anywhere else. Because that was one of the other things. I told you, we're picking apart this thing. They didn't know if he had fired more than one shot. So they didn't know if I was shot elsewhere too. I wasn't, but they had to make sure. And so they gave me the scan to see to what extent and to see if anything was lodged, just how bad the fracture was.
And of course, did they arrest him on the spot?
So the cops came. I should have mentioned they came to me right before I got the CT scan, and they said, "We know you were close with him. What do you want to do?" And I said, at this point, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And I just said, I think it was unintentional. He's like, was there any malice? Was he mad at you? Would you have an argument beforehand? And I said, no, everything was fine. We were just about to go get some beers at a bar. I don't think he did this intentionally. And then they said, okay. And he was not charged with anything.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
But now, how did they reconcile the 2-hour delay in you getting help?
That was not an issue for them. they did not consider that a problem. That came with my personal injury case later on, which was its own grueling process, a 4-year process. But the cops didn't really care. They sort of said, "What happened? Why didn't you? Why they interviewed him on the side," and I got to read some of that, and he kind of just said he was scared,
and that's why he threw the bullet in the garbage can.
Yeah, I mean, he was scared,
Okay, so how long did that procedure take to put the pins in and everything?
Sure. So they said that the swelling looked normal, and so after the scan, and they're like, "We're gonna have to do this, but we're gonna wait till tomorrow morning." And so I spent the night with a hole in my head, which was pretty wild to think about. I had all these tubes in me, all these wires. I was like in a spider web of things, and they actually had to give me a tetanus shot, which because of the surgery and the bullet, of course. It was kind of funny to me, I guess. I rolled over, got my little shot, and went to bed. But in 6 a.m, by that time, my whole family had come, and I was wheeled in for the craniotomy. I think it took a couple hours, to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And then I woke up, and then my dad lives out of state, and so I was like, "Oh, my dad's here," and it just was weird because I see him so little. My parents are divorced, and I was just like, "Oh, this is must be an event because my dad's here." It became a thing, And then I was in the hospital for about a week after that.
How long after that realization, my family's here?
Mm-hmm.
And be honest, my brother, because I'm gonna tell you, if you say something, give me the different answer than I'm expecting, I'm gonna roll with you. How long did it take you before you got pissed? Come on now, I mean, laying there, what? How you shoot me, bitch? Excuse my mouth. You know what I'm saying? Right?
I needed you as an advocate, clearly.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, my mom was that person too.
Okay,
my mom throughout it all was there, and that same gut feeling that you get. She was that for me. Since I couldn't really feel that because I had a hard time placing blame and anger on Mark just because we were so close for so long, as you mentioned. I just didn't really know, and because I knew it was unintentional, and of course he was very stupid, and we can talk a little bit about how stupid. There's clear instructions if you're a gun owner on how to safely use and store your weapons, and he obviously didn't do any of that. But still, the closeness made it tough. But I had family who
did he come to the hospital in those first 5 or 6 days?
No. So the other thing about this that I think you will not like.
I'm not liking it right now.
You're not gonna like this actually either. We haven't talked since at all.
What? You gotta be kidding me, man.
Not one bit. I haven't said a one word to him since that night.
So he walked and didn't even have to not suffer, but he didn't even have to stand up like a man and say, "I'm sorry I did this to you"?
He said sorry that night, but that was it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm floored.
No, I know. It's hard to believe. It's actually weird to me too to think about that. And I almost knew it too. I had a prophetic moment when we were all sitting around the kitchen table right after it happened. Public safety had left. We're all there, and we're all just hands on our faces, just silent. And we're all. I knew it. We're all thinking this is the last time we're gonna see each other. This is it right here. And I could just feel it. It was just such a palpable moment, just such a thick, gross moment.
I mean, dude, if this was a sci-fi movie or some dramatic kind of a movie,
mm-hmm.
It would end with him looking in the mirror, realizing that he was just pointing the gun around and pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Kind of deliberately. I'm just saying I have no nefarious thoughts, and I don't want to.
Of course.
But it's just for him to not come back. I would even say come back now. And say, brother,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry what I've done to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. So 5 days in the hospital, 6 days in the hospital.
Something
I'm
like that.
sure. I'm sure that an injury like that
Mm-hmm.
caused other symptoms and things. I mean, from physical
Yeah.
agility and things like that, balance, other things like that. How long were you in rehab? How long did it take for you to, and I don't want to say recover, but how long did
Yeah.
it
Of
take for you
course.
to come back to some normalcy?
For sure. For sure. So yeah, like you said, it's very multifaceted injury. There's the cognitive element. There's the physical element, which I will say the physical element is the speediest of them for me. Was the speediest. And then there's the emotional element, which is like, the major depressive disorder, anxiety, the post-traumatic stress.
Are you still going through that now today?
Well, all of it to various degrees, and I consider myself a disabled writer. And like you said, I have an invisible disability. And that's sort of a thing that I like to mention because it's hard to raise awareness for something that is invisible. It's like people like to see things to believe it. And that was another element of my case, my personal injury case, that was hard because it's hard to have, these doctors that already want to disprove you, from the insurance company's point of view. They're already going to say, you're fine, nothing happened. And then I look like what I look like, and if they didn't know me before. And so they're like, it looks mild to me. So that's the tough thing. But yeah, so um, physical recovery, it was more balance, like you said, agility. I lost a lot of weight just because I couldn't really eat. I
Got
was
it.
on opioids and anti-seizure medication. And so I lost like 10, 15, it might have even been 20 pounds at one point of like all my muscle and,
Attribute.
whatever.
Sure. Let me right this second,
Yeah.
pause
Yeah.
for a second to tell you that if in fact, my friend, I've been
Mhm.
working with a doctor out of upstate New York who could do something with you virtually.
Yeah. Yeah.
The doctor's name is Dr. Frank Burke. He has a protocol that's called RTM.
Mm-hmm.
You want to look it up. It's under rnr.org. You can look it up. It's a protocol. It's called Reconsolidation of Traumatic Memories.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is considered one of the number one treatment for PTSD in the world right now. It's been validated by science all over the world, being utilized right now in the Ukraine, being utilized right now by veterans all over the country. I could get that a couple sessions with you with him. The thing that's so crazy about it and incredible about it is that no medication,
Yeah.
5 to 10 hours, he could probably reduce some of your PTSD.
Yeah.
And if you want me to, I will make sure we reach out to him and get that for you. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic for sure. I've done a little bit of that therapy, but I'm very open minded, so that would be
Yeah.
great.
RTM is a little different than, most of the treatments for PTSD right now is something called exposure therapy or
Yeah, I've
prolonged
heard of
exposure
that.
therapy. This is entirely different.
Great.
And 9 out of every 10 people who've been through this protocol walk away
Mm-hmm.
having remitted some of their symptoms or all of their symptoms.
Mm,
So I will make sure that when this is over, I'm going to have my office reach out to you, connect you with
great.
Dr. Burke so that you can get some relief, my friend.
No, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. I
Sure.
appreciate
Yeah, absolutely. Now that brings us back to,
it. Mm-hmm.
the key point of today's discussion is how these accidental shootings fit into a larger conversation about gun violence and gun safety. You were starting to talk about the fact that being
Yeah,
a
right.
gun owner, he clearly was not demonstrating, the requisite skill to be a gun owner.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you'll see a lot of like these campaigns for various reform organizations, and they're all very fantastic. They have great information, but it's like be smart. Well, Mark was very dumb in
Mm-hmm.
this instance. He was not smart. It's all this. There's ways to properly store. There's ways to they always want you to store ammo and the gun separately. You never wave it around like he was, and like you mentioned this to some degree. He pointed the gun at the wall and pulled the trigger. Like he decided to pull the trigger. I mean, you're right. That was a conscious choice to make, and
knowing that there's something on the other side of that wall.
Yeah. I mean, one way or another, that happened, and yes, it was what I would call a negligent discharge, and maybe someday in the future there can be like you would even say like a smart weapon that can prevent a negligent discharge. Maybe something has to be activated, or you're going to be firing a weapon, but that's not for me to decide. But either way, like that was a conscious choice he made.
That may not be something for you to decide, but that's something that you should have input into. I would agree with you 100%. I will tell you 100% disclosure. I spent 22 years, my career spanned 22 years in the military, and I was a gun-toting, gun-owning fool. There was a period of time where I had 15 guns, and I reduced those down to about 11, and then about 3 years ago, I sold them all. I got rid of all. I kept one. I have one gun now. I keep that gun in my own apartment, and I have it in a safe place.
Yeah.
But and I am the same. It's completely unloaded right now. I have a separate magazine somewhere else that even in the case of emergency, I know if I can get myself in that room, I can get the bullets from one place, get the gun from another place, slap them in, and go. And I'm proficient enough to do that quickly. I could probably get that done in less than 30 seconds. So
exactly, all the studies say that. They say storing them separately is at no disadvantage. You are in an emergency situation.
Nope.
You should still be able to do what you have to do.
Absolutely correct. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And I even like the idea that you have to do something intentional, not just take the safety off, but something else intentional that says, I'm ready to fire. That then would reduce these things like this, where it's an accident that isn't an accident, is not an accident. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I also use that word accident in the book, and it was actually brought to my attention after the fact. And the word accident also I use because the blame factor. I had a hard time placing blame on Mark, and so for me, accident is like you're almost pre-forgiving them, and I did forgive them the moment it happened, but most organizations prefer the word unintentional, which I'm learning about, and that's because accidents happen. Like that's the word that you want to follow in your mind. Like accidents, it implies that an accident will happen. Well,
it didn't happen.
Exactly, and that's the thing. A negligent discharge or an unintentional shooting, it doesn't have to happen. It's very preventable. So.
Yep. And, again, I did, kind of press you a little bit talking about who you were before the accident. Talk a little bit more, and only asking you to do it again about who you are after the accident, so that everybody who's tuning in and listening to this will understand what possibly one of their family members or loved ones may have to go through. I mean, how are you living now, my brother?
So, now I am at a place of improvement, I will call it. I know, I'm aware of what my tendencies are, and I know how to try to circumvent them. But in the thick of it, it was very impulsive, very prone to rage from very little things. Again, like these short fuse things, I might bonk my head on something, which to me is like, okay, if I get another TBI, I could, die. Yeah. So I'm very protective about, my head naturally. And so if I run into a wall, if I hit my head on a car door, it really sends me into a state of aggression, and I get very short and very angry very quickly.
And I'm sure you don't participate in any kind of contact sports or anything, because that accident could happen.
Exactly. So and so that was one of the things. I'm prevented from doing a lot of that. I still play basketball, not necessarily with people. You could call it shooting hoops, but I play that. Cardio is fantastic for after a brain injury. That was recommended to me. In fact, what was recommended to me was ultimate frisbee, but I like basketball a lot better.
Sure. So
I do that.
And how are you in relationships now? I mean, you mentioned the fact that you hadn't seen the Mark, but have you seen the roommate and his girlfriend or anybody like that? Those people?
I I haven't, but I do. We tried to talk a little bit in the weeks after, virtually, like just over text. But the more I thought about it, I just sort of wanted him also to get the closure he needed. Because I just think that the three of us were actually so tight knit. Like it wasn't just me and Mark; it was all three of us. That was the group for 4 years, and so I was like, seeing you would only make me think of Mark, and like I think it would be the same for him, and then thinking of Mark would only make me think of the shooting, and then I'm just like, we're just in this vicious cycle, and I just think, for the sake of everybody's sanity, I just think it was sort of a friendship breakup, which is unfortunate because you'd like to have broken up from a more valid reason. Just maybe your values change over time. Maybe you move out of state and you just grow apart, but you still keep in touch. But instead, it had to be this very violent break.
Yeah. And is this where you talk about it in your book? And I'm sorry I haven't read it yet, but I'm definitely going to go get and read it. In your book, you explore the theme of toxic friendships.
I do. Yeah.
Is that where you kind of talked about this?
Yeah. So it's sort of like, I didn't realize it until after the fact that this friendship wasn't what I truly wanted at the time. And it was not my intention to write about toxic friendships at all. In fact, as I was writing the book, I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about how great of friends we were and make the tragedy that much worse. I was like, this is going to be sweet. People are going to be so sad to hear about how this happened. But then all of a sudden I'm writing and I'm like, oh, but then he was kind of mean here. He was kind of like, he had these really insular jokes. He was kind of shallow. He was always making fun of people. And these things kept cropping up like that. He was always making fun of me and just calling me these names every day. And it was in jest, but you hear those things after a while. It's just like becomes a part of you. It becomes second nature. You're just like, I'm just being put down all the time. And of course, like you mentioned, we had our good times. Don't get me wrong. Like we were friends, but like he seemed to have want to use irony over any like genuine, sincere feeling. Like irony was more important to him. Everything was like a dumb joke. Right. Like he was like an internet troll, but like all the time.
Well, now after experiencing such a traumatic event, my friend, I mean, how are you able to rebuild trust, and how are your relationships with others now?
Well, I'm really, really thankful that I have the support system that I have. And so my girlfriend actually called me in the middle of the shooting. The cop was to my left and my girlfriend called me, and I picked up the phone and I was the first one to tell her. I was like, yeah, Mark just shot me in the head, and she goes, oh my God, like, do I have to drive you to the hospital? And it was her first thing she said to me. And I said, I think the ambulance is taking me. I think it's taken care of, and it was so strange to break that news to her. Like almost like in an exciting way, not like a happy, exciting way, but like it built excitement in me to be the first to break something so harrowing. But in saying that, it was traumatic for her, and she could have just as easily had broken up with me after that, and dealing with me in recovery. Anytime she could have just said, this is just too much. But I mean, I'm in Florida right now on my for my bachelor party. We're actually getting married,
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, it just deepened our relationship. I think we have like this wisdom that I think few at the time. We were 22, but like we had to grow up fast, in that situation. And I think we took that wisdom with us and just had it enrich our relationship instead of tear it apart.
And she clearly understands you and understands what's happened since, right?
Yeah. I mean, she's the best. She was an advocate for me when dealing with the university, when like they like didn't understand how bad I'd been hurt, and we're like, so what? You're like can't come to class now? Like what's going on here? And she's like, dude, he got shot in the head. Like he's having neurosurgery, like neuro as in Greek for like he just got shot in the head. Like what? It's just like what don't you get? So she was that for me. She was emailing all my professors saying like he just can't do this. You got to just and thankfully all that amounted to they allowed me to graduate with my standing that I had at the time, and I recovered enough to walk for graduation.
Oh, congratulations on
Yeah,
that.
so that was a big cool thing for me.
How's this experience kind of influenced your views on mental health and its relationship to, let's say, gun violence?
Yeah, well, so they call what happened to me like the perfect storm of mental illness and violence. You know, PTSD plus TBI. Those two symptoms, especially, and this is the research has all been in like a military context, of course, but what happened to me was not too much unlike that. And so they just these two things like feed and reinforce each other. And so it's just been sort of me going to talk therapy, peeling back these diagnoses and just seeing how I can sort of find a new normal that's good for me and healthy for me. I can live alongside my trauma without it, you know, totally destroying me.
Yeah, I mean, are you still in therapy now?
I do talk therapy. Yep. So I just go like see a therapist, chat, and that sort of thing. Just sort of an upkeep.
I mean, you told me that you're writing, and
Yes.
I mean, have you? Is that difficult for you to concentrate, or can you stay focused?
Yeah. So my book is actually broken up into very, very short chapters for that reason. I wrote this immediately. Like I was telling you, like 2 weeks after it happened, I started drafting the night the in scene the night of, you know, that's that sort of whole shooting section. And it was just easier for my brain at the time to just break it up in little digestible chunks. And so no chapter in my book is like longer than 7 pages. That's like the outlier. They're all like 1 to 2, 3 probably is the average.
Okay.
For that reason.
And I know some of your work has been published in some really, prestigious outlets.
Yeah, thanks.
How does that help you with your recovery, knowing that you're able to share it with so many people?
I mean, that was everything. You may know the author Roxane Gay. She is a tremendous advocate for emerging writers, and so she published an essay I wrote about the night of the shooting to her, huge fan base, and that I think directly led to me finding success now. And the validation was fantastic, as you mentioned.
Again, one more time, what's the book title and where can people get it?
So it's called Friendly Fire, a Fractured Memoir, and you can get it wherever books are sold. Anywhere online, in store.
And what's the main message, or some of the messages, the key messages that you'd like readers to take away?
Well, I think in terms of invisible disabilities, I think it sounds cliche, but it really is true. You just never really judge what someone else is going through. And it's been said a million times, but that's a big thing for me. Like you see someone, they might look like quirky. They might have something that you think is strange going on, but like you just have no idea what that person went through. And then alternatively, for like survivors like me, if you're battling with any trauma, any form of disability, I had a good family friend tell me once, it's not what happens, but how you respond that really matters. And I think that was something I had to repeat to myself a lot.
You're involved in a lot of different advocacy work right now. You're working on other initiatives, right? What are some of those passionate things that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I'm doing, like as I mentioned, I'm doing some work for invisible disabilities. I'm writing some pieces about gun safety. And then, of course, I'm just my main focus is literary fiction now too as well.
Literary fiction. You got something coming out soon?
So I do publish short stories, and so if I'm hoping one day I will have a collection to share with the world. But yeah, they're all online on my website.
That's great, my friend.
Yeah,
well, I mean, anything else you want to share about my listeners?
Oh man, I think. Well, I just want to thank you. Honestly, I'm grateful to be here, both on your show and alive. And I think if we all just be a little grateful every once in a while, even among our opportunities and our misfortunes, let's just be grateful for life, our own brand of life.
Absolutely. I myself suffered a traumatic brain injury, a major hemorrhagic stroke.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know what you're going through.
Absolutely.
And again, you look at me, you can't tell. You don't see the scars. They didn't have to open anything up.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have brain damage. And,
Yeah.
that brain damage manifests itself sometimes in my own emotional ability. I have a difficulty really locking emotions up. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Well, my friend, I really wish you well. Congratulations on your pending nuptials. I hope that goes extremely well. Where are you going to get married?
It's called Semple. It's in downtown Minneapolis.
Okay. You said you were in Florida right this second, huh?
I am in Florida. Yep, celebrating my bachelor party. We're actually doing a combined thing, so it's her. All of us are together.
What part of Florida?
Fort Myers.
Fort Myers. I'm coming to you from Miami right now, so we're talking.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, my friend, I hope you get as broad a dissemination of this as you possibly can.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for your advocacy. I think you're the type of person that should roll before Congress and give them a little bit of a tutorial on the stupidity that they have been dealing with in trying to come up with some responsible legislation that can help prevent some of this.
Yeah, I hear you. Absolutely.
And you probably don't want to hear it, but I think your friend's an asshole.
I've heard it.
All right, you be well. You take care of yourself. Love that family of yours. Take care of yourself. Watch the head, because I know exactly what you're saying. Got to watch getting it binged. And, my friend, I look forward to reading your book, and I look forward to hearing more about you, because I think you're just started.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much, really.
You take care. And for all of you, make sure you tune into the next episode of Free Thinking with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Free Thinking with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear feedback, so please send us your comments.